User warm, empathetic Emma Thompson sat in her beautiful office on the top floor of Thompson Motors, staring at another angry letter from a customer. The paper felt heavy in her hands as she read the harsh words. "Your staff treated me like garbage," the letter said. "They looked at my old clothes and decided I wasn't worth their time." This was the fifth complaint this week. Emma's heart felt like it was breaking into tiny pieces. She had worked so hard to build this business from nothing 20 years ago. She was just a struggling single mother in Manchester, trying to make ends meet. Her small apartment barely had enough room for her and a young son, Michael. She remembered those cold nights when she worried about paying the rent. Back then, Emma had one old car that she fixed up and sold from her tiny garage. She saved every penny she could. When people looked down on her because she was poor, it hurt deeply. She promised herself that if she ever became successful, she would treat everyone with kindness and respect, no matter how they looked or how much money they had. Now, 20 years later, Thompson Motors was the biggest car dealership in Manchester. The building was tall and shiny, with huge glass windows that sparkled in the sunlight. Expensive cars filled the showroom floor. Emma employed 40 people and made more money than she had ever dreamed possible. But something was terribly wrong. Emma stood up and walked to her window. Down below, she could see customers walking in and out of her showroom. Some looked happy, but others seemed upset or disappointed. She wondered what was really happening down there when she wasn't watching. More letters arrived. Every day, people complained that the salespeople ignored them. They said the staff made jokes about their clothes or their accents. Some customers said they felt so unwelcome that they left without even looking at a single car. This broke Emma's heart because she remembered how it felt to be treated badly just because you didn't have much money. Emma thought about her son Michael, who was now 25 and worked as a teacher. She had raised him to be kind to everyone. "Mom," he often said, "you taught me that every person has value, no matter what they look like or where they come from." Emma was proud of the man he had become. But now she wondered if her own employees understood this important lesson. The complaints kept coming. Mrs. Johnson wrote that a salesman laughed when she asked about a small, affordable car. Mr. Patel said that nobody would help him for over an hour because of his accent. A young couple complained that the staff assumed they couldn't afford anything and ignored them completely. Each letter felt like a knife in Emma's heart. Emma tried talking to her managers about treating customers better. She sent emails reminding everyone to be polite and helpful. She even put up signs around the building about good customer service. But nothing seemed to work. The complaints continued, and Emma felt more frustrated and sad every day. One cold Tuesday morning in November, Emma woke up with a strange but powerful idea. What if she could see what really happened in her showroom? What if she could experience what her customers experienced? The more she thought about it, the more determined she became. Emma looked at herself in the mirror that morning. Her expensive suit and perfect hair made her look like the successful businesswoman she was. But that wasn't what she needed today. She went to her closet and found some old clothes she used for gardening. She put on worn jeans, an old sweater, and cheap shoes. She tied her hair back simply and didn't wear any expensive jewelry. Then Emma practiced changing her voice. Instead of her usual confident tone, she spoke more quietly and with a different accent. She would become Mary, a working-class woman who needed to buy her first car. Mary would be nervous about spending money and worried about being treated fairly. As Emma walked toward Thompson Motors that morning, her hands started to shake. She felt scared and excited at the same time. What would she discover about her own business? Would her employees be kind to someone who looked poor? Would they treat Mary with the same respect they showed to wealthy customers? The big glass doors of Thompson Motors reflected Emma's simple appearance. She looked like any ordinary woman who worked hard for her money and saved carefully before making a big purchase. Her heart was beating fast as she took a deep breath. Emma whispered to herself, "Today, I will learn the truth about what happens when I'm not watching." She thought about all the complaint letters and wondered if she would experience the same problems. Would her own employees treat her badly because of how she looked? With courage in her heart but worry in her mind, Emma pushed open the glass doors and stepped into her own showroom. She was no longer the boss. She was just Mary, an ordinary customer looking for help and hoping to be treated with kindness and respect. Use a warm, empathetic tone. Emery stepped through the glass doors of Thompson Motors, and her worn shoes made soft sounds on the smooth marble floor. The showroom was incredibly beautiful. Bright lights shone down on rows of shiny cars in every color imaginable. Red sports cars, black luxury sedans, and silver family vehicles filled the space. Everything looked perfect and expensive. But Mary noticed something else right away. The way people were looking at her. 3 salespeople stood near the front desk, all wearing expensive suits and polished shoes. When they saw Mary in her old clothes, their faces changed. They looked at her up and down, taking in her simple jeans, worn sweater, and cheap shoes. James was the first salesperson Mary noticed. He was a tall man with perfectly styled hair and a dark blue suit that probably cost more than Mary made in a month. When he saw her walking in, he glanced at her quickly and then looked away. He picked up some papers from his desk and pretended to be very busy reading them. Mary could tell he was avoiding her on purpose. Catherine was standing near a bright red car, talking to another salesperson named Robert. Catherine had blonde hair and wore a fancy dress with high heels. When she saw Mary, she leaned over and whispered something in Robert's ear. Both of them started laughing quietly while looking in Mary's direction. Mary felt her cheeks get warm with embarrassment, but she tried to ignore them. Mary walked slowly around the showroom. Looking at different cars, she stopped in front of a beautiful blue sedan that caught her eye. It wasn't the most expensive car in the showroom, but it looked reliable and comfortable. The kind of car a working person might save up to buy. Mary imagined herself driving it to work every day. Feeling proud of her purchase, Mary stood there, looking at the blue car. James finally walked over to her, but he didn't look happy about it. His face showed that he thought this was a waste of his time. He crossed his arms and looked down at Mary like she didn't belong there. "Excuse me, love," James said in a voice that wasn't friendly at all. "That car costs more than most people make in a year. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the used car lot across town. They have cars more in your price range." Mary felt like someone had slapped her across the face. Her cheeks burned with shame and anger. Inside her chest, Emma's heart was breaking. She couldn't believe that one of her own employees was talking to a customer this way. But Mary stayed calm on the outside. She took a deep breath and spoke quietly but clearly. "I'd like to hear about the payment plans, please," Mary said. "I've been saving money for a long time, and I'm ready to buy a car." Catherine had been listening to the conversation. Now she walked over with a mean smile on her face. She rolled her eyes dramatically, like Mary had just said something incredibly stupid. "Payment plans," Catherine said with a laugh. "These cars aren't for people like you. Look around. Do you see anyone else dressed like that in here? You're wasting our time. We have real customers to help." Robert, the third salesperson, was now watching the whole situation. Instead of helping Mary or telling his colleagues to be nicer, he just smiled and shook his head. It was clear that all 3 of them agreed that Mary didn't deserve to be treated with respect. Mary looked round the showroom. and realized that Catherine was right about one thing. All the other customers were dressed in expensive clothes. There was a man in a business suit looking at a luxury car, and a well-dressed woman with her teenage daughter examining a small sports car. Mary was the only person who looked like she worked with her hands for a living. Emma's heart was completely shattered inside Mary's chest. These were her employees. She paid their salaries. She had hired them and trusted them to represent her business, but they were treating customers terribly based on nothing but appearance. They were judging people by their clothes and deciding who deserved help and who did in single quotes. Emma remembered all those years ago when she was really struggling. She remembered walking into fancy stores and having salespeople treat her exactly like this. She remembered how small and worthless it made her feel. She had promised herself that her business would be different. But clearly, her employees had forgotten what good customer service really meant. Just when Mary felt like she couldn't take any more rudeness, something changed in the showroom. Someone else had been watching what was happening, and this person decided to do something about it. A young man who had been helping another customer finished his conversation and started walking toward Mary. This young man looked different from the others. His suit wasn't as expensive, and his shoes weren't as shiny, but his eyes were kind, and his face showed genuine concern for what he had just witnessed. Mary didn't know it yet, but this person was about to restore her faith in human kindness. Use a warm, empathetic tone. David Miller had been working at Thompson Motors for only 3 months at 25 years old. He was the youngest salesperson in the showroom. His suit wasn't as expensive as the others, and his shoes had small scuffs that he tried to polish away each morning. But David had something the other salespeople seemed to have forgotten. He had a kind heart and genuine care for people. David was helping an elderly gentleman choose between 2 family cars when he heard the conversation between James, Catherine, and Mary. He watched from across the showroom as his colleagues treated the woman badly. David's stomach felt sick as he listened to their cruel words. This wasn't right. This wasn't how his mother had taught him to treat people. When David was growing up, his family didn't have much money either. His father worked 2 jobs to pay the bills, and his mother cleaned houses to help make ends meet. David remembered times when his parents were treated poorly by people who thought they were better there. And them. He promised himself he would never make anyone feel that way. After the elderly gentleman decided on his car and left to think about it, David watched James and Catherine walk away from Mary. They were laughing together like they had just played a funny joke. But Mary stood alone, next to the blue car, looking hurt and confused. Her shoulders were bent down. David could see that she was trying not to cry. David took a deep breath and walked across the marble floor toward Mary. His heart was beating fast because he knew James and Catherine wouldn't like what he was about to do. They had already told him that he was too soft with customers and that he needed to focus on people who could actually buy expensive cars. But David didn't care what they thought. He had seen enough hurt for one day. "Hello, I'm David," he said with a warm smile as he approached Mary. "Can I help you find something today?" His voice was gentle and respectful, completely different from the way James and Catherine had spoken to her. Mary looked up at David with surprise in her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't speak because she was so shocked that someone was actually being nice to her. Then she felt tears of relief starting to form. Finally, someone who cared about helping her instead of judging her. "Yes, please," Mary said quietly. "I've been saving money for 2 years to buy my first car. I was looking at this blue one." David smiled even wider. "That's a wonderful choice. Let me tell you all about it." For the next hour, David treated Mary like she was the most important customer in the world. He opened the car doors and let her sit inside. He showed her how. All the controls worked. He explained the engine, the safety features, and the warranty. When Mary asked about gas mileage, David pulled out a calculator and showed her exactly how much she would spend on fuel each month. David brought Mary a cup of tea and a comfortable chair so she could sit while they talked. He answered every single question she had, no matter how small or simple it seemed. When Mary asked about something David didn't know, he didn't pretend to have the answer. Instead, he said, "That's a great question. Let me find out for you." And he went to look it up in the computer or ask his manager. Mary asked about payment plans. David spent 20 minutes explaining all the different options. He showed her how much her monthly payments would be with different down payment amounts. He helped her understand the interest rates and the length of different loans. He even called the bank to get her pre-approved for a financing so she would know exactly what she could afford. "I don't want you to buy something that will be hard for you to pay for." David said kindly, "The right car should make your life better, not more stressful." Throughout their conversation, James and Catherine kept walking by and giving David strange looks. They whispered to each other and shook their heads. They clearly thought David was wasting his time with someone who probably couldn't afford to buy anything. But David ignored them completely. He focused all his attention on Mary, treating her with the same respect he would show to anyone else. When Mary mentioned that she worked at a local factory, David asked her about her job with genuine interest. When she said she lived alone and wanted a reliable car to get to work safely, David nodded with understanding. "Everyone deserves to find the right car," David said with a sincere smile. "That's what we're here for. It doesn't matter if someone wants the most expensive car in the showroom or the most affordable one. Every person who walks through those doors deserves our best service." Behind Mary's disguise, Emma's heart swelled with pride and hope. This young man understood exactly what her business was supposed to be about. While James and Catherine saw old clothes and heard a working-class accent, David saw a human being who deserved respect and kindness. He saw someone who had worked hard and saved money to make an important purchase start as the afternoon grew late. Mary knew she needed to leave. She had learned everything she needed to know, both about the car and about her employees. David walked her to the door and shook her hand warmly. "Thank you for your kindness," Mary whispered, her voice full of emotion. "You've made me feel like I matter." David smiled. "Because you do matter. Please come back any time if you have more questions," as Mary walked away from Thompson Motors. Emma's mind was already planning what would happen tomorrow. She would return as herself, and everything would change. Use a warm, empathetic tone the next morning. Emma Thompson woke up before sunrise. She had barely slept all night, thinking about everything that had happened the day before. Her mind kept replaying the cruel words James and Catherine had said to her when she was disguised as Mary. She also thought about David's kindness and how he had treated her with such respect and care. Emma chose her best business suit from her closet. It was dark blue with a perfect fit, and she paired it with her favorite heels and pearl necklace. She wanted to look professional and strong for what she was about to do. As she drove to Thompson Motors that morning, her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Today would change everything. At exactly 9 o'clock, Emma walked through the front doors of her showroom. She looked completely different from the simple woman named Mary who had visited the day before. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup was flawless, and her expensive clothes showed clearly that she was someone important. The reaction was immediate. Gasps filled the air as employees throughout the showroom recognized their CEO. Some people dropped the papers they were holding. Others stopped talking mid-sentence. Everyone knew that when Emma Thompson visited the showroom unannounced, something significant was about to happen. James was standing near the same desk where he had been, pretending to read papers the day before. When he saw Emma, his face turned pale and his mouth fell open. Catherine was across the room talking to a customer, but when she noticed Emma, she quickly excused herself and walked over with a nervous smile on her face. David was helping her. Young couple look at a small car when he noticed the sudden change in the room's atmosphere. He looked toward the entrance and saw Emma Thompson standing there in her impressive suit. His heart started beating faster because he had never spoken directly to the CEO before. "Good morning, everyone," Emma said in a voice that was steady, but filled with sadness. "I need all employees to gather in the main showroom area immediately. We need to have an important meeting." Within 5 minutes, all 40 employees had gathered round Emma. Some looked curious, others appeared worried, and a few seemed completely confused about why their boss had called this sudden meeting. Emma stood in the center of the group, her expression serious and determined. "Yesterday, I visited this showroom as a customer," Emma began, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet room. "What I saw and experienced broke my heart into pieces." James and Catherine exchanged worried glances. They were starting to realize that something was very wrong, but they didn't understand what yet. Emma reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device. "I recorded my entire visit yesterday. I want everyone to hear what happened when your CEO walked through these doors disguised as an ordinary working woman." She pressed the play button, and suddenly the room was filled with the sound of James's voice from the day before. "Excuse me, love, that car costs more than most people make in a year. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the used car lot across town." The room became completely silent. Every person could hear the rudeness and discrimination in James's tone. Then Catherine's voice filled the air. "Payment plans. These cars aren't for people like you. You're wasting our time." Some employees looked shocked and ashamed as they listened. Others seemed surprised that their colleagues had spoken so cruelly to a customer. A few people shook their heads in disappointment. James and Catherine stood frozen, their faces red with embarrassment and fear. Emma turned off the recording and looked directly at her employees. 20 years ago, "I was just like the woman you met yesterday," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I was poor, struggling to pay my bills, and constantly judged by people who thought they were better than me because of how I looked or how little money I had." She paused and looked round the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. "I built this business with one simple goal. I wanted to create a place where every person would be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what they looked like, how they dressed, or how much money they had." James tried to speak up. "Mrs. Thompson, I can explain." But Emma raised her hand to stop him. Her eyes were filled with disappointment and determination. "There is nothing to explain, James. Your actions yesterday showed me exactly who you are and what you think of our customers." Then Emma turned toward David, who was standing quietly near the back of the group. His face showed confusion and nervousness because he still didn't understand what was happening. "David," Emma called out clearly, "yesterday, you showed everyone in this room what this company should really be. While others judged a customer based on her appearance, you treated her with kindness, patience, and respect. You spent time answering her questions. You made her feel valued and important." David's eyes began to fill with tears of surprise and joy. He couldn't believe that the CEO had noticed his work. "You're promoted to sales manager, effective immediately," Emma announced. "You will receive a significant raise and be responsible for training other employees to follow your example of excellent customer service." David was so shocked that he could barely speak. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," he whispered. Then Emma turned back to James and Catherine. Her expression was firm and final. "James and Catherine, your employment with Thompson Motors ends today. This business has no place for discrimination, rudeness, or treating customers badly based on their appearance." The room was perfectly quiet. Everyone understood that change had begun. User warm. Empathetic to me. 6 months had passed since that life-changing day when Emma Thompson discovered the truth about her business. Thompson Motors looked the same from the outside, with its shiny glass windows and bright lights, but everything inside had changed completely. The atmosphere was different now. There was warmth and kindness where there had once been coldness and judgment. Emma had worked tirelessly to transform her company. She created new training programs that every employee had to complete. These weren't just boring meetings about selling cars. Instead, Emma taught her staff about respect, kindness, and treating every customer like a valued human being. She shared stories from her own past, telling them about the times when she had been poor and struggling, and how it felt to be judged unfairly. "I want you to remember," Emma told her employees during one training session, "that every person who walks through our doors has a story. They have dreams, worries, and hopes just like you do. Our job isn't just to sell cars. Our job is to help people and make them feel good about themselves." David had grown into his role as sales manager beautifully. At first, he had been nervous about leading people who were older and more experienced than him, but Emma supported him every step of the way. And soon David was confidently training new employees and helping existing ones improve their customer service skills. David built a team that shared his values of kindness and respect. He taught them to listen carefully to customers, to answer questions patiently, and to never judge someone based on their appearance. When new salespeople joined Thompson Motors, David made sure they understood that success wasn't just about making sales. It was about making people feel welcome and valued. The results were amazing. The angry complaint letters that used to arrive daily stopped coming completely. Instead, Emma's desk was now covered with letters of praise and gratitude. Customers wrote about feeling respected and cared for. They mentioned specific employees who had gone out of their way to help them. Some people even brought their friends and family members to Thompson Motors because they knew they would be treated well. One letter particularly touched Emma's heart. It was from an elderly man named George who had been nervous about buying his first new car in 30 years. "David and his team made me feel like the most important customer in the world," George wrote. "They didn't rush me or make me feel stupid for asking so many questions. They treated me with dignity and respect. I will never forget their kindness." Emma was so inspired by the changes in her own business that she decided to expand her undercover visits. She began visiting other businesses around Manchester. Disguising herself as an ordinary customer, she went to restaurants, clothing stores, banks, and other car dealerships. Each time, she learned valuable lessons about human dignity and respect. Sometimes Emma was treated well, and she made sure to write positive reviews and compliment those businesses. But other times, she experienced the same discrimination and rudeness that she had once allowed in her own showroom. These experiences reminded her why her mission was so important. Emma started sharing her story at business conferences and community meetings. She talked about the importance of treating all customers with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. Many other business owners were inspired by her message and began making changes in their own companies. 1 year after that terrible day when Emma discovered the truth about her business, something wonderful happened that showed her just how much things had changed. Emma was working in her office when she noticed a young woman walking nervously toward the showroom entrance. The woman's name was Lisa. and she was 22 years old. She had been saving money from her job at a local bakery for 2 years, hoping to buy her first car. Lisa wore simple clothes, old jeans and a worn sweater, and she carried a small purse that had seen better days. She looked exactly like Mary had looked 1 year earlier. Emma watched from her office window as Lisa entered the showroom. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she looked round with wide eyes at all the beautiful cars. Emma held her breath, wondering how her employees would react. Within seconds, 3 different salespeople noticed Lisa and walked toward her with warm, genuine smiles. David reached her first, but instead of competing with his colleagues, he introduced Lisa to Sarah, a newer employee who specialized in helping first-time car buyers. "Welcome to Thompson Motors," Sarah said kindly. "I'm Sarah, and I'd love to help you find the perfect car today. Would you like some tea or coffee while we talk?" Emma watched with tears of joy in her eyes as Sarah spent the next hour treating Lisa with the same respect and pat that David had once shown to Mary. Other employees stopped by to help answer questions and offer assistance. Lisa's nervous expression gradually changed to one of comfort and trust. This was the business Emma had always dreamed of creating, a place where kindness mattered more than money, where every person was treated with dignity and respect. During their weekly staff meeting that Friday, Emma stood before her employees with pride in her voice. "Remember," she told them, "we don't just sell cars here. We give people hope, respect, and the chance to dream bigger. Every customer who leaves here should feel better about themselves than when they arrived." The lesson Emma had learned was simple but powerful. Treat every person as if they matter, because they do. This message had transformed not just her business, but the lives of everyone who worked there and everyone who walked through their doors. The end.